I found one. This toy was brought to my attention by a few of you because it's pretty much begging to be turned into a working Game Boy. So today, I'm showing you how. This is the Fisher-Price Laugh and Learn Lil Lamer. Gamer. And it's trying its absolute best to look like a Game Boy without getting sued by Nintendo's ninjas. But something's off here. Does this baby realize he's holding it backwards? He's literally just staring at the battery compartment. Maybe the children just yearn for the power plants. Now, the back isn't as well written as the Twist and Learn. Nothing rhymes here, so I'm docking some points for that. But it does have a hint to an Easter egg. Up, up, down, down, left, right, B-A! Riveting. The power sound is very Game Boy-esque, but these slidey Tetris pieces don't seem to do anything. Neither does this big switch. So today, we're finding a use for them. We are going to turn this hunk of brightly colored plastic into a real Game Boy, while still keeping it feeling just like a baby toy. And at the end, we're going to run some games like Grand Theft Auto and Pokemon. But knowing my luck, we're going to run into a million different problems first, as we always do. The Lil Lamer has 4 chunky screws holding the shell together, and a bunch of hot glue apparently. The toy cartridge isn't removable from the outside, and it's only held in by this thin spring. A few more screws and out comes the motherboard. We're going to keep this part in the button caps to make sure the whole console still feels like a baby toy, however bad that will end up being. But now we need to choose our donor organs to use for the surgery. Based on size alone, I think the perfect candidate is the Game Boy Color. It looks like it'll line up with only a couple headaches, which is a lot fewer than usual. I picked this one up in... I'm sure you can guess by this point. It turns on just fine, but the screen has obviously seen better days. These are super easy to take apart, so if you have one laying around, updating the shell and screen is a great starter project if you're interested in this kind of thing. And hey, speaking of being interested in this sort of thing, you should subscribe. Now, the plan is to somehow fit this whole board inside and wire up the toy's original buttons and speaker to replace the Game Boys. But before we get to that, as we know, the Game Boy Color screen is a bit damaged, so we're going to replace it with a modern OLED display. It's bigger than the original Game Boy screen, so we need to find some space to mount it to the front. I thought I could do this with a Dremel, but it looks pretty rough. Instead, I'm going to make a 3D model of the screen, and then this machine will hopefully do a better job. It looks like it fits just fine, but the cuts are still pretty jagged. That's 2 fails in a row. I've had enough of this for now. Instead, let's focus on getting the motherboard a place to sit inside. Of course, with more dremeling. The way this lines up, it looks like it's made to be. It's so close to fitting flat, but the toy power switch is in the way. This part of the Game Boy's motherboard should just be a ground plane without any data wires running through it. Now we can begin the fun part, the soldering. We need to connect each button from the toy to the Game Boy so we can actually play on it. And what's the most important of all? The power switch. From looking at both power switches, they seem to function about the same. So we should be able to simply solder a wire for each pin over to the new switch. The speaker is just as easy as a simple replacement. And yeah, just like that. Now I'm going to wire up and solder just one button and a ground wire first, to make sure that it'll actually work before wiring up the rest. Huh? It's not turning on anymore. You're kidding. This has happened a lot earlier than usual. What could have caused that? Is the power switch broken? After testing with a multimeter, I've found that we blew a fuse. I don't have another Game Boy Color motherboard, but I do have a PlayStation 1, and it happens to use the same fuses. That's great, but it doesn't tell us what made it blow. I disconnected the test button and now it turns on. Back in action, so that means something on the toy motherboard is the issue. To fix that, I'm going to remove all of the original components like the capacitors and the main chip. I probably should have done that before. It seems like it was feeding some voltage back into the Game Boy. Anyway. Now our test button works, fantastic. That means we won't have any issues wiring up the rest of them, as long as I don't get them the wrong way around. That's foreshadowing. Did you catch that? Wow, what a creative effect. Back to the screen. I've 3D printed a frame that will hold the bigger screen in place without getting it damaged. The shell just needs a new clean cut to fit it. And you know what they say, third time's the charm. Oh no. No. That does not look good. Oh. The bit even snapped. Thankfully, most of the cuts are clean. But that's still 3 fails in a row. I'll come up with a solution to fix that little bit of carnage later. For now, we need to get this frame stuck down to the shell to give it some structural rigidity again, after being mangled. Some of you may have noticed that we missed a couple buttons during wiring, because the toy doesn't actually have a start or select button, but it does have this giant orange rocker switch thing. So, similar to how we did the volume slider in the new Nintendo Switch U video. Go watch it if you haven't. We're going to wire up a couple tiny buttons and epoxy them in so that we can press one way on the orange rocker for start, and the other way for select. With that sorted, we can assemble the front half of our new Fisher-Price Edition Game Boy. The new OLED screen just about fits, but the screen translator board doesn't fit. Give me a sec. After more cuts, I've got it fit snugly and taped down so it doesn't fry anything again. Now we can finally wire up our last 2 buttons to the Game Boy and fit it down for hopefully the last time. We all know it probably won't be though. We can't just slap the back cover on and call it a day, unfortunately. We're going to have to make some space for the new battery and the charge board, and of course the game cartridge slot. This is basically just Dremel and fit testing over and over until it's just right. It's better to cut too little than too much, as we learned with my machine earlier. It's looking good so far. The battery and charge board fit, and we should have enough space for a game. But seriously? Black screen? I feel like I missed something. I didn't check the instructions for the OLED screen, to be honest. Let's test with the original Game Boy screen to see if I'm right. And yep, works fine. So what did I miss? Well, I'm a silly dum-dum. Maybe this toy is meant for me. I forgot to solder the power wire for the new screen. It can't do much displaying without any power. And then the other end needs to be soldered to the power switch. Now we can actually get this thing finished off. The back fits on, but we still need a little hole cut for the new USB-C port. And to fix up this shell damage from my misbehaving CNC machine, I've printed a little matching sticker to cover it up. It's a band-aid fix, I suppose, but it's much faster than waiting for another toy to arrive in the mail. And I think it really ties it together. Let's boot up Pokemon Yellow to do a final full test. Noticed how I still haven't taken the factory screen protector off. That's because I know deep down we aren't done yet. I've wired both A and B and up and down on the D-pad backwards. So up is down and down is up, and I suppose I had wired A and B how they're supposed to be, but Fisher-Price decided to put these backwards. So now I have to flip them too. After taking it apart one final time, I promise this is actually the last one, we can swap the button signal wires around and screw it all back together. I've also printed this cover piece to clean up the cartridge slot a little. Behold, the Game Boy Color Fisher-Price Edition, upgraded with a USB-C rechargeable battery and a big crisp OLED screen. It's fully working now and the screen looks way better than I was expecting. The blacks are super deep and the colors look fantastic. The buttons also aren't too bad, certainly worse than the Game Boy's original buttons, but perfectly serviceable. The USB-C port and the battery work great, and it's actually pretty easy to use the volume slider with these little Tetris blocks. Project success! There are definitely a few things I would do differently if I built this a second time, but I guess that's the same with the second time you do anything. What would you change or add if you made one yourself? And let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for future projects. I've already got the next one coming soon. Goodbye.